Welcome to the Red Rose Film Club, a movie podcast that picks apart movies from the viewpoint of the political left. We love deconstructing movies almost as much as watching them, and wanted to share our conversations with our liberal, leftist, socialist, communist, Marxist, and Leninist friends. Hi, I'm Craig, and I'm with...
Hey, I'm Hal. So, Craig.
Yes.
It's been a minute since we've gotten together to chat about film. What other pop culture are you getting into these days?
Oh my gosh, I've been watching so much because I am suddenly not having to work as much. So I've been going to the movies quite a bit. AMC A-list.
Hey.
What's up?
This is a room full of A-listers right here.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course. But I've been getting my money's worth from that thing. But first off, I want to say one movie that I've seen recently is American Psycho. Hal and I both watched that because we were on the Load Bearing Beans podcast with Matt and Lacey. That's called Load Bearing Beans. Y'all can check it out. We talked about American Psycho for a good little bit. Now, as far as the other ones that I've seen a lot, and I kind of just wanted to rapid fire throw them out there. And if you want to talk about any of them that you've seen, then we can stop and talk about them. But I have too many to talk about individually. All right, ready? Final Destination Bloodline. Great Tony Todd goodbye sequence. The kind of shit that I usually don't like in a movie, but it was very beautiful and nice. This is Best in the Series, except for when the one guy gets his guts pulled out of his butt in the pool filter by Final Destination 5. Or
that's in 4. It's in
I think that's actually honestly the worst one. Okay.
I disagree.
I only say
I think 5 is the worst one. But I love all of them. I say that I love all of them, but to me 5 is the worst. It's where the initial, the impetus, vision is the bridge collapsing.
Driving the bus. Okay,
Yes, and it's the dweeby guy giving acupuncture, flipping it. It's still a good time. It's still a Final Destination movie. Like, a bad Final Destination movie is a fun movie to me, but it is the worst, in my opinion.
I really enjoyed Final Destination Bloodline. I saw the two Nick Cage movies, The Surfer and Dream Scenario, both of which I liked a lot, and they're both from this new era of Nick Cage where he just plays like an impotent little dope. It's great. Have you seen either? I did like both, but The Surfer is really weird. It basically takes place in a parking lot for the entire movie.
The tone of it looked like it was like an Oz.
A little bit, yeah, for sure. There is kind of playing on the tropes of the surfer beach, Australian, I don't think that's a cliche in movies or whatever, but it is that setup. But then for various whatever reasons, Nick Cage just kind of finds himself unable to leave this parking lot, and is just kind of more and more pathetic as the movie goes on, which is fun. I saw Dangerous Animals. That movie fucking rocks.
I have not seen it, but I would like to.
We are in a very interesting, Jai Courtney. I feel like Jai Courtney getting a push is kind of in season with the Locusts. I think we're in our third Jai Courtney cycle, and this one is really a lot fun. He's not as shredded, of course, but he is beefy and meaty in a really menacing way in this. And he also does a Buffalo Bill inspired dance sequence, which I really enjoyed. But Dangerous Animals. And this is one that honestly I was not because it was too gory, but because I was there was a moment where I was this is messed up. I need to look away. And it was just a very fresh take on both serial killers and sharks. Mountainhead, stinker. Did you see that one? That's the guy from Succession's new one.
I have
on
not
HBO.
Even heard of this,
It's a movie. Yeah, it's a stinker.
Oh no. I've been very checked out from television, including television that I I gave up on season 2 of The Last of Us, not because I didn't like it, but just because that's why I dropped out. No, it's because I was there's 5 more hours of this in which I could watch 2 films. That's always my logic with TV, except for Drag Race All Stars.
I also saw Mission Impossible.
I am watching.
It was a bit of a letdown for me. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
I had watched Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning both. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. Producer Chantel and I saw it last night with Mike. Actually, to be honest, I think sometimes I've talked about this on the pod before. I think sometimes seeing a movie a little after the media cycle hurts the film for me. Like my expectations are too high, or they've been like overly muddled by reviews or critics that I like and reading. This is actually an instance where I think the movie benefited from that because my expectations were incredibly managed. Like I was not expecting to like it. I was kind of expecting to be like, oh, there'll be some good set pieces. But I enjoyed it. Doesn't mean it was amazing. But I enjoyed it more than I
as like a final
anticipated.
Chapter. I enjoyed it as like a final chapter, but I do feel like it was a little bloated, and I also feel like the AI, and the AI villain was like
it definitely was too long. It did not need to be that long. See, I did think it was I wish they had just gone like Rocco's Basilisk. Like when they started talking about the AI, especially with everything that is in the zeitgeist and happening politically, with like on the most explicit level, obviously like Elon, but then the Zizian cult and all of this stuff. I was like, if they went like really hard into the cult aspect of it and the kind of parapolitical element, I think it would have been cooler. I still enjoyed it because it was just nonsense. Like the plot, I was like, this doesn't matter. There's no this like stupid MacGuffin. I simply don't care about it. I'm just watching like the various action choreography and set pieces being strung together and
run beautifully.
Tom Cruise
he's looking
continuing
old,
to emote beautifully.
This is the first one where I was like, somebody face. Slow that old man down before he hits himself.
I turned to Chantel. I was like, it's actually great because I retain hope that he will have a dramatic turn again and go back to some of the work that he was doing earlier in his career. That was not just action. I mean, I love him in an action movie, but I really like to see like there is a 60-year-old Cruise version of Magnolia in him. Absolutely. Like I'm not saying that exact role, but I just mean that equivalent level of performance. And we just haven't seen something like that from him in feels like decades. Yeah. So to me, it was I'm happy to see him looking old because it means that he can do that.
Okay. So the last newish movie I saw that I was going to run through briefly, but then I need to know if you've seen
Still Daddy
either
and
of
Still
the Accountant
Problems
movies. Dude.
So I have seen. Okay. I have seen The Accountant more than one time. And I have to say, the reason why I rewatched it most recently
is way more
is because I saw the trailer for The Accountant too. And I thought,
way more pronounced.
I don't think his voice sounded like that. I don't think he had like that intense of autism voice in the first one. And so Mike and I watched the first one. I was like, no, he doesn't.
I just thought it was a like Ben Affleck's like Taken, like a kind of, aging action movie. Like aging star action movie. I did not know that it was you can harness your autism and it will make you John Wick. It is crazy. I mean, I loved it. I loved it despite. And then the second one, you said you saw the second one.
He's like Captain Racketeering.
I loved it. I loved the second one.
No, we haven't seen the second one. I do intend to watch it when it comes on streaming. But I was compelled to rewatch the first one because the voice in the trailer of the second one, I was like, that is not what I remember.
So in this one, his little AI, not AI, but like his assistant, like, give me the info, stat, is basically like Professor Xavier's School for Autistic Children. Like there is literally a school of like autistic kids that are all running the like data for him all at once, and the lead one who might have been in the first one, I don't remember, like is just a robotic voice that like she types into her thing. It is crazy. It is literally, it almost looks like the same building they use for Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. It is so weird. Oh, it's already there. That's how I saw it.
Well, I look
yeah.
forward to watching
Really
that. And by
fast.
the way, I'm pretty sure it's on Prime in like 1
Okay,
week.
then I want to talk about a few ones that I saw that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I was
I'll
going to
start with
say
the first
it's
one, which I'm
out
pretty sure you
right
have
quick.
not
They're
seen
not
and you will
doing
not
that
like, but I
3
loved it
month,
so much, and it's the most fun
timeline.
that I've ever had in a movie theater. You have seen it. Was I right about the second part?
Okay.
Okay.
I have seen this, by the way.
I
but go
saw
ahead.
Friendship, the Tim Robinson vehicle, where he is a Tim Robinson
my views are
character
more
trying to make a
complex,
friend
but-
as an
so
adult.
go ahead and share yours, and I'll tell you
we
how,
saw it the
how
night
I
it came
feel about
out
it.
in like a packed theater of like people that obviously were Tim Robinson fans. So it was like, I don't know, it was just really fun and like life affirming. I have not laughed that hard with a group in like a long time. Do you know what I mean? Like the whole theater, like all responding to the same stuff was just really fun. And I just loved the movie. It cracked me up. How'd you like it? Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think I rated it 2.5 stars, like perfectly down the middle for me. I did have a fine time in the theater in the sense that I did laugh. There were parts of it that were funny. I do think it was less like it was not exclusively cringe humor in terms of like the notes of,
It does have those
laughter
moments
that were emanating from it. My biggest thing about it is that it really is a horror movie. Like, and it not just in terms of like some of the tone, but like even the music of it is a very synthy, like drawing on kind of like a 70s guy or like a Carpenter moment. Like it is very much evoking horror elements to me. And I wish it had just gone in that direction more fully. I would have liked it more because really what it is, you're a friend who follows me on Letterboxd. I wrote this on there, so you've heard it before. But to me, it was like single white male, the cringe comedy, and I wish it was just single white male because I think there is a lot of interesting space to explore and maneuver in there, and the parts where it kind of turned away and like lessened what it was doing by exclusively couching it in humor. I was like, I wish you were a little unflinching. Like, I wish you had just totally gone down the path of like this man lost his wife in the sewer. Like, you know, but I didn't. I didn't hate it.
Like,
I liked it more than I expected.
With
but I don't know that I ever need to watch it again. Like, it didn't leave a lasting
loneliness
impression on
of
me
like just desperation for like companionship, but unable to be the person that like can handle like friendship and companionship. Just like I not necessarily like for me personally, just like the experience of like being in your 30s and like trying to find friends and make friends and things like that. I don't know. It was just really, now I painted myself to be like an absolute monster at parties. I'm not a Tim Robinson guy. I mean, I am a Tim Robinson guy in the sense that I like him. I'm not a Tim Robinson guy in that my personality mirrors him, hopefully.
No. in terms of the format, yeah. But I think that's kind of where I'm saying, like, I wish it wouldn't have turned away from the direction that it was diving into, because I do really like horror and drama that explores like this kind of archetype of a person who, despite their best efforts, cannot connect to what is happening socially, like cannot comprehend it. Like an example in the horror realm that is like a woman beyond single white female would be like May. Right? Like that's a movie that I love, and it does have comedic elements of it, but it does not back down from like, she's a fucking weird little freak, but she's also a weird little freak that like within, she kind of has this internal consistency in the sense that like her worldview, she cannot conceive of herself as a freak, but is butting up against other people's walls and not comprehending it. And like, you know, I do find that not relatable in terms of 100% of me lines, but like, who hasn't had a situation where you had a friendship that just wasn't working out and you couldn't understand why it wasn't connecting? Or like you went on a date with somebody and you're like, oh, that went so well. And then they're like not responding to you in a way that you can comprehend. And if you are to go down the road of like, hey, can you explain to me why that didn't work out and why, then you're the weird freak, right? So I think that is a meaningful thing to explore, and that the gender dimensions of it,
Playing
in terms
like
of usually it
straight
is
guy
women
or like
that
it kind of seems like maybe
um,
he's going to take a wacky
that are
turn,
like the
and
vehicle
I think
for
that's kind of
probing
really
into that
interesting
kind of
too. Is that
social
he never
dynamic.
really
So
does.
I was very interested
turn
in
to
that.
the like
And
wacky
I
guy,
liked
but
Paul
he
Rudd
I don't
a
know.
lot in the role.
There is something interesting he's doing with like a fairly straightforward role. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of playing well, and it's like he is very cool to Tim Robbins' character,
Yeah.
but then there's other contexts we see him in, like in workplace, and he's really not. Like there are kind of these moments of truth that it gets to, and the absurdist qualities of it I liked a lot.
Yeah,
like when they
yeah.
start singing "My Boo" in like this very like dulcet tone, I was like, yes, what is happening here? I think I would have liked to see everything maybe pushed like 25% further or whatever, and it be just slightly less in the cringe comedy direction, and I think it would have been cooking. And instead I was like, okay, that's how I saw it, you know.
So I also saw Lahane for the first time, which is awesome, and I loved it. I wanted to see that because I saw, what did I see with? Oh, I saw The Shrouds recently with Vincent Cassel, looking incredibly like David Cronenberg, which I think was probably on purpose for that role. And then I realized
about that.
I had never seen Lahane, and so I watched it, and it is great and is incredible. But the stupid part is that there was a guy that's in one scene that had a shirt that I was like, I need that shirt. I'm gonna have to buy that shirt. And I bought that shirt.
Because we live in 2025, somebody had the shirt.
Immediately,
yeah.
Yep. So I bought it, and I just wanted to show because it's nonsensical. It's just
Amazing.
A shirt that says Elvis shot
That's
JFK.
That's a really good shirt.
It is a good shirt.
You would love that, Mike. That's a very Mike.
Well, I was like, what is that? Where's that from? And I looked it up, and as far as I can tell, it not from anything. Like it's in Lahane, but has since become like a bit of a kind of a non sequitur, like nonsense, symbolic phrase for kind of the themes of Lahane itself. And then finally, I saw last night or the night before, Bring Her Back by the Filippo brothers. Do you know how to say their last name?
No,
Filippo?
But I'm very curious to see how it is, or hear how it was, rather. I understand tenses. Because I was not really interested in their first film, not for any, it just didn't, didn't super appeal to me, but I love Sally Rooney and
Sally Hawkins.
Sally
Holy
Rooney.
Shit, by the way.
Sally Hawkins.
She's good in it.
And the fact that she was in a horror film was very intriguing to me. And the images and kind of this use of, seemed like, I don't know if they're using film or just replicating like the digital film transition or what is going on there, but it looked compelling visually.
It is. It's great. It's got two like really good kid performances too. Well, one, I don't know how old he is, but he's supposed to be like 17 in the movie, and then the girl who is a blind actress playing a blind character is really, really good too. And they're like
woke warriors. We love it.
Yep, always. They like play two kids that they're both of their parents die. Well, they're actually step siblings, and they go live in this. They're placed in like this foster home by Sally Hawkins. And the longer they're there, the more they realize that
things are not right.
Crazy shit is going on. And it also does have, if you are a fan of like, not necessarily like overly gory movies, but like bursts of like disgusting violence, which I think Talk to Me had a good number of that. And there is one scene in Bring Her Back where I'm not that squeamish, but I was like, well, nope, can't handle that one. Can't handle that. But yeah, so what have you been watching?
I've also watched many, many things in the last like month and a half. But I'm just gonna highlight two things in particular, both of which are one's a Blu-ray, but that I rented from Cap City at some point in time in the last couple of weeks. The first is Morvan Kalar, 2002 film directed by Lynn Ramsey.
I've not. I like Lynn Ramsey's few that I've seen from her, but I've not seen this one.
So stars Samantha Morton, And it's about a young woman whose boyfriend completes suicide in their shared apartment, like Christmas Eve. And she does not tell anyone that he is dead, and submits a novel that he has written as if she wrote it. And it's kind of like the adventures / misadventures that roll out following those series of actions and decisions. But it is like a Lynn Ramsey film. It's not some grand, broad scope. It's like a very limited kind of
character study.
Yes, exactly. And it just appealed to me a lot because, one, I love Lynn Ramsey's directorial style. The cinematography is that real, like, especially in this 2002 kind of like independent, fuzzy. Sometimes the light is like real blown out.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, these kind of grazing, ambling shots paired with like really tight cropped on people's faces. Like, it's just very beautiful and has like an independent spirit to it. And then it also, speaking of, kind of how May is like a nasty girl. She also is a nasty girl, but if in the scope of like, or in the spectrum rather of like House of Psychotic Women, if there are like all these horror movies and dramatic films that are about like hysterical women, she's not hysterical. She is just like lost and alienated, but it's kind of still on that spectrum of just like, you're not watching a person who's making good, moral, ethical decisions. Or healthy decisions. But I thought I liked it quite a lot, and it made me. I was already quite excited to see Die My Love, her film that just debuted at Cannes, that stars Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson. I assume we'll get it in the fall, sometime between fall and like February.
Sorry, my cat is attacking Hal. By attacking, she is lovingly
patting. I was already really excited to see that, but after watching this, I was just like chomping at the bit. 'Cause, like, I have seen We Need to Talk About Kevin, and I've seen You Were Never Really Here, the Joaquin Phoenix feature from her, but I had not seen any of her like earlier work that was like filmed.
Ratcatcher, and there's another one that is like one of her real early ones. Always.
Yeah. So I was excited to see this, and it's quite good, and I recommend it. And then the other thing, I have been watching I'm watching a lot of like older like silver screen films. HBO Max, again, even though I never stopped calling it that. Shouts out to getting back on the right side of history. Has like a Betty Davis collection that I've been watching a bunch of stuff through, and I've watched Singing in the Rain a couple of times, and I decided that I really needed to watch Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which I had never seen.
Nor have I. I have a lot of blind spots on those. Like,
I was like, it's time. I really enjoyed it. Now, of course, like all the overarching premise is a little rough. But both Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe are brilliant in it. And truly, I mean, I've seen, obviously, I mean, it's been endlessly remixed and referenced, the classic scene of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. But the full like context of that in the film is so well done. And Marilyn Monroe, I mean, I know I'm not like reinventing the wheel here by being like, wow, she's so charismatic, but she was so charismatic. Like, really,
I've heard
delightful. Yeah. Really delightful.
She seems she's got that it factor.
Yeah. She's
going places.
For sure did. And Jane Russell too. I mean, there's a really wonderful musical number early in it where Jane Russell is like singing in a setting on a a boat where a bunch of young men who are like, remember if they're Olympians or just in general, like U.S. athletes that are representing the U.S. in a contest internationally, or maybe they're with a college. Does not matter. It's like young men who are fit and athletic doing various like athletic poses and activities while she sings and like jumps between them. And it's delightfully choreographed. And she also incredibly charismatic and a wonderful performer. So highly recommend.
Awesome. Can I mention one other one that I think you and I have talked, and it might come up in a future series, but I love this movie and it is awesome, which is Missing, the 1982 movie by Costas Gavras, about a true story about, I just looked up his name and so I can Charlie Horman. You know the story about this guy?
No, I don't think so.
He was an American who was kind of like on him and his young wife were on like in kind of a eat, pray, love style, just like see the world, I don't know, venture or whatever. And they ended up in Santiago, Chile for a while. And he ended up getting involved in a left-wing newspaper in Santiago, Chile. Well, when the Chilean coup happened and Pinochet came to power, Charlie Horman wound up missing and no one was helping them. The U.S. Embassy. Well, turns out Charlie Horman may have been writing for and uncovering the fact that the U.S. was actively backing Pinochet and training his troops for the coup itself. And he was disappeared essentially and executed. I mean, it's based on a true story.
We love to do that.
Yeah, we do love to do that.
People.
We did not do the disappearing or the executing, but we
regimes
had
that we've
knowledge of
given
it. Yes.
monies and training and equipment but and guns.
The crux of the movie, which makes it so fucking good, is so Sissy Spacek plays his wife, who's like, something is wrong. You need to help, and no one's really helping. And then Jack Lemmon plays his father, who is like, America, we wake up, we might not like her every day, but we have to love her. We wake up every morning, we salute. There's no way they could be doing anything wrong. This is the country that I fought for, that you fought for. Like, he's that kind of like judgy boomer dad who has to slowly come to the realization that like, oh, that's wrong. They've like forsaken my son and they don't care about him. Not only do they not care about him, they might have been involved. Not only have they might have been involved, but they've been actively covering it. It is really, really good. And I loved it.
Probably silent generation if he was old enough to be somebody's dad at the time that Pinochet.
True.
Like the son would be a boomer.
True. I realized that.
Sorry,
I was 100% thinking of it from my own perspective. Right. Just like any old crotchety white guy is a boomer. And then before we move on,
boomer's dad, even worse.
Before we move on, can I hit you with a bit of the wrestling talk?
Sure. I will say I have not viewed I have one thing I could bitch about on this. Go ahead.
Well, I have one thing that I was going to bitch about, but now we can celebrate. Were you following the drama with Mr. R-Truth?
Yes. Okay. So this is like one of the few. There's basically two things that I could talk about as it relates to wrestling right now. And it's this. And then the other is Mariah May, which actually my complaint about very much resonates with the movie theme. So I'll save that for a moment. But
so R-Truth, for the uninitiated wrestling fans, by the way, I'm going to Monday Night Raw next month.
Oh, nice.
Hell yeah.
In Jacksonville?
Birmingham.
Okay.
Yeah. So R-Truth is this dude that's just been in the company for like almost 20 years. He really is just like I'll take any stupid thing you do and I'll make it funny. I'll make it interesting. I'll make it exciting.
Yeah, he's like the definition of like a journeyman.
Wrestler. Yeah. But like you'd love to see him. Like he pops up, does the tiniest little thing. He makes it memorable. Like he's great. Well, WWE unceremoniously did not renew his contract,
which WWE loves to do. Have people on TV one day and then fire them the next day.
So there was like a kind of a uprising amongst the fans and like a demand. There's like the We Want Truth movement. Well, this Monday night, he made his actually at the pay-per-view, he made his triumphant return, but
which was Money in the Bank, right?
Money in the Bank. Yeah. But did you see his promo from this Monday night?
I did not see the promo, but I did see that he cut his hair and then debuted as Ron Killings, which is his
real name. Yeah. And so more and more from what is coming out, it seems like everything that's going on is kind of reflecting what was happening behind scenes, because what happened was he got pissed, rightfully so, that he spent 20 years with the company and they just dropped him and supposedly just wasn't taking calls. And they finally, the vice president called him and he spoke, and from the reports that he's like, I'll come back, but I'm coming back. And basically all the stuff that's going on now is shit that he demanded as a farewell tour. So he's getting to wrestle under his own name. He's cut these braids that he's had for 20 years. He might be doing a heel turn, but he's also just one of the most lovable guys.
Right. I mean, yeah, he can never not be a tweener. That's his.
Yeah. He's trying to be
people love him.
He's trying to be hard, which I think is going to be fun. He's trying to be he's trying to do a tough guy thing, but I think they're going to play that up, but also still have him be
yeah, I'd love him to go on a hardline fuck Triple H tour. Especially since the previous person who was all fuck the man is now wrestling in Saudi Arabia. Actually, that's the third thing that also relates to the content. I am big fucking mad at CM Punk for wrestling in Saudi Arabia. Piece of shit.
Damn.
What a fucking sellout.
I do like that every time R-Truth talks to Triple H, he calls him Tommaso Ciampa, which is very funny, who is a different wrestler that just kind of looks like Triple H.
Yeah, if Triple H went on Ozempic and stopped doing steroids, he would look like that guy.
Yeah.
The thing that I will say about wrestling, while we're on the topic that relates to movies, is there is a wrestler named Mariah May or previously wrestled under the name Mariah May, who used to wrestle in Japan, and then was wrestling in AEW and very recently signed with WWE for NXT, which is their developmental program. She will not be developmental very long. She's a very good wrestler. She just needs to be taught their style, basically. And while she was at AEW, she was wrestling with, we had a program, an ongoing conflict with Toni Storm, who is a wrestler I like a lot.
Hell yeah.
Her gimmick is very much centered around Silver Screen Hollywood. She was doing a Norma Desmond Sunset Boulevard thing for quite a while.
She's still doing it, right?
The overall gimmick is that, but in terms of the very specific drawing on Sunset Boulevard, was part of this program with Mariah May. Yeah, Toni Storm is great. I love her. Her gimmick is delightful and quite different from anything that other folks are doing. And Ben Mankiewicz from TCM, this is how referential and stuff she was being. They were creating skits that were referencing silver screen films. And Ben Mankiewicz from TCM was introducing her. They brought him in. It's really great stuff. I have an action figure of hers that's black and white. Love her. And she and Mariah May had this ongoing antagonism until very recently. Its ending predates Mariah going over, but not by much. And so yesterday, Mariah May premiered WWE, and she premiered under the name Blake Monroe, doing a motherfucking silver screen, curled hair bob gimmick.
Damn.
So fuck her.
That's lame.
Because she just straight up stole Tony's gimmick.
That's lame as hell.
And the second that she converted into another program. Fuck WWE for encouraging that. So
yeah. Also, there's no way it's going to work because that gimmick should be dumb as hell for anybody. It's just Toni Storm has the
No, they're literally doing it. The thing is that Toni Storm, authenticity is bullshit, but authentically is really pulling in
she
these
sells
references
the shit out of it.
And reinscribing them and redeveloping them in the context of this. And the promo video that they released is literally Blake Monroe putting on little fluffy high heels, and there's a stupid gimmicky voice that is giving Fallout to me. It's not actually 1950s silver screen. It's 2000s simulacrum of that just screams Fallout Vault to me. That's the kind of voice over that's happening on it. So I'm just mad about that.
Lame-o.
Yeah, boring.
Yeah. Well, I don't watch NXT.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, she's gonna be on your TV screen very soon because she's a very good wrestler. So
yeah,
fucking get your own gimmick, bitch.
And you can take that to the bank. You heard it here.
But not to Money in the Bank because it already happened.
It did. It was not. It was okay. It was all right. And one before we move on, have you been watching any NBA finals? Because that's what's been going on a lot. I have been watching. I've been watching a lot more WNBA as of late, and I have occasionally. But usually, what I do here's what I do when a basketball game is on: is I have the book that I'm reading, and I lay on the couch, and then like I'll look up, and maybe I'll like watch for like 10 minutes, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna read now. And then I'll put the book down and then I'll look back up. So that is the like interval at which I have been imbibing professional basketball the last been like month and a half. It's been really cool. And I'll just say this one thing because this is the most interesting part. But Tyrese Halliburton from the Pacers has hit in this postseason 3 game-winning or game-tying shots with less than 1 second left, which is incredible. Game 3 tonight. Matter of fact, as soon as we're done recording, I'll be watching Game 3. I'm sure I will. And I've been a little bit paying attention to the WNBA, mostly getting in fights with old white guys that say some hella coded shit about Angel Reese. It's been most of the conversations
media
I'm having.
Environment and dialogue around the WNBA is fucking insane.
It's crazy.
And it's really disappointing. I heard I really like this podcast that The Athletic does called No Off Season. That's The Athletic's WNBA podcast. And wasn't Sue Bird. It was some other there. I wish I could remember in this moment. But they've been doing interviews with like real classic WNBA, like best of all time players that are retired. And it was Diane Taurasi came on and said, you know, like the thing that really sucks about, obviously the first layer of it is like sexism and racism. That sucks. The second layer of it is we can't actually even engage in like critical discussion around the playing of the sport because all of this fucking cruel bullshit and oppression that surrounds it, which is actually another layer of misogyny, is to say like, I can't even engage you for the thing that you are supposed to be one of the best in the world at because we have to spend all of this time with the froth of racists and the froth of misogynists. And it's just really frustrating and annoying because she is not doing terribly well this season in terms of her gameplay. It's still like
very early.
Sure. Yeah. But like the fact that can't on a like sports criticism commentary level cannot be engaged in because not even just old white men and certainly not even just men, but fucking white people cannot like let her live and engage her as an athlete and not as like a totem of every fucking bullshit idea that they have about what a black woman should be, much less a black woman on a basketball court should be, is so fucking stupid and infuriating.
And also the other part that's really annoying about it is like, this could be exactly like the kind of thing that would be great for the WNBA as far as like getting viewers, is that there's like 2 really high profile people that like are both competing at high levels. Obviously one is competing at a little bit higher level than the other, that kind of like have this years old like rivalry. Like this is like why people watch fucking sports, is because it has this like inherent drama and shit in it. And now that's being like, I don't know, weaponized against Angel Reese, I feel like the most part. Yeah, which just sucks that like we can't even enjoy the sport of it all.
Right. A rivalry is fundamental to the sport in terms of like the drama and narrative that viewers look for and can be really engaging. But also, again, it's like not even being able to have discussions about the sport because you want to say shit. And, you know, I think there's some really interesting stuff, like journalism and commentary around like the way the Chicago Sky is gelling or not gelling, the way that the coaching of the Chicago Sky is forcing her into a very specific role to maybe try and develop her in a different direction that maybe is not in line with like her baseline skill set and her greatest strengths. And there's really interesting discussions around that to be had, but we can't have it because somebody on Twitter makes up a rumor that someone was making monkey sounds, and then the WNBA investigates it, and no player, including any Chicago Sky player, said that didn't happen. And so they're getting whipped up into a froth by fucking Twitter. Like, just can the women play?
Honestly,
can we let the women play?
I will say that I do appreciate that this has given me a very strange series of interactions with my sister, who lives in Chicago and does not care about any kind of sports at all, but knows that I am like somewhat interested. And when I went to Chicago last year, I was really trying to convince her to go to a Chicago Sky game with me. So since all this has popped off, I just get like a random, my sister being like, is this the one that you wanted to go see? When like just every time like a new Angel Reese story comes up. But yeah, so I have enjoyed that. My sister being in the middle of it, yet gleefully.
Yeah, there was the Sky and Lynx were playing when I was in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. The Sky and Lynx were playing in Minnesota the like day where we had some free time. And I was like, God damn it, I wish it were inverted. But we the Atlanta Dream is the team that I've been predominantly following the Atlanta Dream, and then also, which I like because we follow Atlanta sports, and also Brittany Griner was traded there in the off season. And I really like a 6'9" woman can block in shots.
Hell yeah.
That is exciting. I like watching that. And then also I have been following the Indiana Fever, incidental to Caitlin Clark, because KK Timpson, who's one of my favorite players on FSU this last year, where we had season tickets for the first time, was actually drafted to the Fever. She's not played much. I mean, she is a developing player. Yeah, she's a rookie and she's a developing player. The only shots that she has taken during a game, she scored. So we love that. Perfect record, literally 100%.
100% field goal, baby.
So I have excited about that. Also, Natasha Howard, who also graduated from FSU. I think she's an 10 or 11 year vet. So she's been in the WNBA for a while. She graduated a hot minute ago. I thought you were saying, I think she's 10, 11. And I was like, hold on, slow down. Hold on a minute. Giantess. No, she is a 10 or 11-year-old vet in the WNBA. She graduated from FSU a while ago. But she got traded during the offseason to the Fever. So now, like, the two FSU alum are both on the Fever. So I was like, okay, we're in there. But the last thing I'll say about this is that the Atlanta Dream did a very cool court. It did a very cool like court pattern for a game recently that said in the middle, pay women's sports some respect.
Oh, that's cool.
And I thought it looked really dope. It was a little controversial because it was like kind of a gray. People didn't love how it looked on TV. I thought it looked delightful. But they have released shirts that have this on it, but you can only buy them at the arena. So the moral of the story is I'm making Chantel and our friend Jason go to that arena when we were in Atlanta for the Beyonce concert in July to buy one of these shirts.
Yeah. Wait, so you already have it? This was previous July, or you're making them do it this coming July?
Yes, we went in September of 23. Yeah, to go to New Orleans to see the Renaissance tour, and then we are going in July of this year to see the Cowboy Carter tour in Atlanta. Very excited for that.
Do you know what tour I'm trying to see if we have money to go to? I think you're gonna like this. Because they have an album coming out for the first time in almost 20 years next month, which is Clips, and they're going on tour. Oh, yes.
I like the single.
Ooh, I was playing it when Chantal got here, as a matter of fact. Yeah, yes, it's really good.
I'm looking forward to it. Love that. Of course, I love Pusha T, and mad respect that No Malice is still going by No Malice.
I know. Honestly, I thought he was going to change it.
So did I. That was the first thing I looked up. Mike said they dropped a single. And that was the first thing I looked up.
Clips consists of the brothers Pusha T and formerly Malice in the 2000s, who after then
converted to Christianity,
became a preacher and changed his name to No Malice, but also stopped rapping. So who cared that he changed his name to No Malice? So then when it was announced they were going to come out, everyone's wondering, are we going to go Malice? We're going to go No Malice. And he's keeping No Malice.
Yeah. I bet there was a betting market for that.
Hey,
but wow, we have spanned the gamut, and we are 46 minutes in.
Oh, okay. Well,
so why don't you? I think you have some stuff that you want to talk about in the current events.
Not we'll bring it down just for a second, and then we'll move on to this really cool movie that we're going to talk about, Libertarias. But I do want to discuss one thing. Hal and I are both local here in Tallahassee, and on April 17th at Florida State University, right here in Tallahassee, a 20-year-old college student named Phoenix Eichner shot 8 people and killed 2 of them. Robert Morales, a beloved local husband and father, and Tiru Chaba from North Carolina, who was on campus for a business trip. It was scary, and the details are horrifying, and like every mass shooting, it has ripped open another abyss of hopelessness, desolation, frustration, and anger. But this shooting, like many before it, was also inevitable, and not just because this is America, where school shootings have been a permanent fixture of American culture for the last 30 years, but this was inevitable because of Phoenix Eichner's poisonous ideology. Details will continue to emerge, but what we know is that Eichner was a lonely young man lacking significance, importance, and power in his life who found comfort in far-right politics and the convenient scapegoats offered by right-wing influencers online. While Eichner is a pathetic person, it's important to remember that these shootings don't happen in a vacuum. Just like the mosque shooter in Quebec in 2017, or the Nazi that carried out the Christchurch massacre, or the shooter in the El Paso Walmart in 2019, or the racist who shot up a black grocery store in Buffalo, or even the shooting just earlier this year in Nashville. The FSU shooting was carried out by a lonely man radicalized online by right-wing reactionaries. And in all cases, their discontent with themselves and the world was nurtured by these reactionaries. Like a baby bird, these shooters were coddled by the mama birds of the online right, your Ben Shapiro's, Candace Owens, Tim Pool's, online millionaires paid by billionaires to convince the rest of poor America that their problems are because of brown people. All of them just regurgitating racist bullshit into the mouths of these dork losers until they're ready to fly and do something about it. And this Phoenix Eichner guy is no different. It's still early and the facts will continue to emerge, but what we know so far is Phoenix Eichner's story looks familiar in that he had a history of espousing white supremacist views and a connection to yet another conservative reactionary with a podcast and an incredibly wealthy right-wing benefactor. In an interview with a local news channel, an acquaintance of Eichner's, when they both attended Tallahassee Community College, now Tallahassee State College, before Eichner transferred to FSU, said that he was kicked out of a political roundtable club for violating their one rule: no Nazi shit. Eichner was also in the local chapter of Turning Points USA, an organization founded by Christian fundamentalist and extreme right-wing zealot Charlie Kirk. Turning Point's entire point of existence is to appeal to and hopefully convert young college kids, like Eichner, to a conservative movement that is increasingly reactionary and almost entirely reliant on fear-mongering and otherizing. And Charlie's body of work fits right along with other right-wing stochastic terrorists, and the formula is unchanged. Convince poor and scared white America that all of their problems are because of DEI or bathrooms for trans people or illegal immigration, while ignoring the obvious problems of our capitalist dystopia. And if in the process their extreme rhetoric convinces more than just a few of their slack-jawed moron listeners to commit a mass shooting, well, that's just the cost of doing business. I simply said that our country was being poisoned by invaders and that the very existence of Western civilization was on the line. How was I to know that one of my fans would take that so seriously? And what's more, Charlie Kirk spoke at Florida State University less than 2 months before the shooting. Now, look, maybe it's irresponsible to imply this, and I have no clue if Phoenix Eichner attended Charlie Kirk's campus fart fest or not, but you'll never convince me it's unrelated. I know on this podcast, I talk a lot about how much I rewatch right-wing ding-dongs and how funny I find them, but I'll be clear. I hate these clowns, and in a just world, these stochastic terrorists, the ones that froth up their audience into a frenzy with violent rhetoric, would face some sort of repercussion for their actions. Political rhetoric has consequences. The way we talk about other people has consequences. If you talk about groups of people like they're rabid dogs, it's only a matter of time until one of your listeners takes it upon themselves to put that dog down. Not much else to say, but rest in peace to Robert Morales and Tiru Chaba, and all of my love and energy to those injured and the mental anguish suffered by everyone involved. With that said, how would we like to move on to talk about the movie we're here to talk about today?
Indeed. Let's do it. So in selecting this movie, can you say the movie in Spanish again?
Libertarias.
Yes, or also known as freedom fighters, in 1986, in English.
Which does translate to the libertarians as the
I mean, they are libertarian communists,
so
like that.
when you asked us to watch this, I was like, okay, cool, Ron Paul movie, I'm down, let's do this. And then I was in for quite the surprise.
Quite a surprise. So while kind of crafting this 3-part series on the Spanish Civil War, I really wanted to choose a movie that highlighted the role of anarchism in the Spanish Civil War. And I was guided by a curiosity around, it's me, what else? Historical context, and the structural origins of Spanish anarchism and its role, like I said, in the Spanish Civil War. In particular, I wanted to understand the conditions that produced the configuration of power in Spain at the time and why that differed from the socialist revolutions and other anti-fascist struggles during that period. This write-up is largely informed by the historical research and writings of Gabriel Jackson, Julian Casanova, Jose Alvarez Junco, as well as libcom.org writings and archival documents. So, historians who study nationalism and national identity argue that in Spain, historically, regionalism has tended to prevail, and that collective identity has been predominantly tied to religion and not the nation state. There are manifold reasons why this is the case, but one example would be like the lack of compulsory military service for adult men, which was often true in many other kind of comparable nations that did have a very strong national identity at the time. Additionally, once the imperial era in Spain began to wane, modernization and industrialization were slow and uneven in their introduction across Spain. Different regions took to new technologies and new ideas at different rates, so it was more like a mosaic than like a unified tapestry. Also, as it relates to anarchism, Spain has a really long history of collective institutions and collectively managed resources going back hundreds of years. So some examples of this would be mutualistic organizations such as agricultural guilds that facilitated loans and assisted with insurance, which existed as far back as the Middle Ages in Spain. There have also long been collectively oriented fishing communities in Catalan, easy for me to say, villages and on the Levant coast. Prior to King Charles V's pursuit of empire, municipalities had local control, where all adult men of a village played a role in choosing a rotating board of officers. Following the Russian Revolution, when villages started operating, when Spanish villages started operating using a syndico unico, which I'll talk more about in a minute, but basically they're like workers' unions, boards that operate in localities. It was basically a revisiting of that past arrangement of like a rotating board of officers for a municipality. Notwithstanding the political leanings of the church, there was a lot of exposure to collectivist models of management through monks, which conditioned peasants to see how a similar system of social organization could yield benefits for them. So in the late 19th century and early 20th century in Spain, anarchism emerged by and for peasants in the Andalusia region, and it was focused on local autonomy, the collectivization or distribution of large estates, and a policy of non-interference with small personal property. Anarchists at this time almost resembled monks or lay saints. Very poor, they traveled kind of preaching their message, relying on the kindness of peasants to be fed, educating as they passed through, living an ascetic lifestyle. Anarchism was a vehicle also for spreading literacy among peasant populations. Once a workman's center, Centro Obrero, was established, their first priority would be to create a school and a library, which included anarchist literature, but also Spanish literature and other translated European literature. Some historians have argued that anarchism appealed to the Spanish population that was seeped in responding to the church capture of all public institutions, more so than they responded to socialists due to the following factors. Anarchists emphasized schooling. Communists did too, but communists largely argued that the state should take care of it. So their local chapters didn't organize around the issue. Well, anarchists did, which was important to peasants, right? They were going to the peasants and introducing education as opposed to like waiting for an overarching structure to do so. Also, anarchists had this kind of aesthetic practice of avoiding alcohol, which resonated with like kind of the moral culture of the areas. And also anarchist officials weren't paid. So there wasn't this idea of like graft and corruption that kind of weighed down socialist organizing in Spain. As anarchism spread to Barcelona, Spain's most industrialized city, and was adapted by those workers, collectivization came to mean anarcho-syndicalist management of firms by committees of workers without government interference. Though the movement was decentralized, in 1910, an anarcho-syndicalist party called the Confederación Nacional del Trabajo, I think I did okay with that. I'm going to give myself a 75%. Which is still failing, but or in English, the National Confederation of Labor, referenced throughout the film that we take as our subject today as CNT, was established. CNT hoped the formation of the liberal reformist regime that was the Second Spanish Empire in 1931, which you may recall from previous episodes marked the overthrowing of King Alfonso XIII, would produce a freer setting for union organizing, which had been particularly repressed under Prime Minister Miguel Primo de Rivera, who ruled from 1921 to 1930. In this way, both ideologically and in practice through its political alliances, anarchism in Civil War era Spain represented a continually negotiated tension between liberal individualism and socialist communitarianism. Federación Anarquista Ibérica, the Iberian Anarchist Federation, maybe like 55 on that one, or
we'll
40,
you know, 60.
Maybe it's a D. It's not enough, you know, or known as FAI, also seen throughout the film, was founded in Portugal in late 1920s and was intended to unite Portuguese and Spanish anarchists while resisting the bureaucratization of trade unions and reinforcing the primacy of direct action. They are generally conceived of as the radical flank of the CNT. Essentially, they existed to try and keep pushing the CNT further to the left to be more radical. Mujeres Libres, bad. Or the Free Women. That I did well. I can say English. I can say English phrases.
That one was 100%.
100%. Was an anarchist women's organization that existed from 1936 to 1939 during the concluding years of the Spanish Civil War, and at its height mobilized around 20,000 women. It developed as a response to the gendered oppression that women faced in CNT, FAI, and other anarchist organizations and militias. They turned the anarchist critique of hierarchy inward and claimed space in the revolution for themselves and their comrades. Now, with that context, let's look at Freedom Fighters 1996.
Oh, yeah. Can I say that I also planned a little surprise that I have a prop that I want to show you that is actually really cool. Normally when I say I have a prop or something, it's going to be really stupid. But I will tell you, this one is cool. And now I'm building it up too much. But I do want to go back and say that you did mention very quickly the emphasis on trade unions at the time, because one an arm, as far as I understand, I'm not a historian, but as far as I understand it, and like kind of an arm of the CNT, not necessarily an arm, but they worked hand in hand, was the Union General de Trabajadores, also called the UGT, which was the main trade union in Spain. All this is to say, I have a friend and was talking to him about doing the podcast, and his family is actually from Spain. He had, I believe his grandmother was in an anarchist movement, or his great grandmother was in an anarchist movement during the revolution. And we were talking, and he says, I have some really cool stuff, and I can give it to you. And what he gave me is really cool, which is it is a sheet of labor vouchers from the era. From the UGT, labor vouchers were essentially like kind of like credit for work. Essentially, it was kind of the idea of replacing like modern currency. But it's a sheet of like bartering. It is a sheet of like labor vouchers that like you can see the perforations, but it's still whole. And it says Sindicatos Objetivo Ganar la Guerra, which is I looked it up. The objective is something about the fighter.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was really cool.
That is really dope.
It just happened to be that he gave it to me while we were in the middle of doing this. So I'll post a picture online so y'all can see as well, because it is pretty cool, actually.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. So CNT is like a conglomerate of unions.
Right. Yeah.
So,
CNT is like the overarching, while as there's like more specific like sub groups that handle like different aspects of it, whereas in UGT was like the trade union. But yeah, so let's do a little intro as far as giving some background on exactly what is happening in the Spanish Civil War at this time. So Libertarias follows one group of these free women in the days after the 1936 Battle for Barcelona, in which Franco's nationalist troops tried to rip the capital city from the hands of the Republic, only to be thwarted by both Republican troops and anarchist militants. The Battle of Barcelona brought the Spanish Revolution that had been slowly simmering for years to a boil. But before we get into the details, let's talk about some of the key pieces in the revolution that will better help us understand Libertarias. The film opens with the liberation of Barcelona. The resistance has won and controls the city, but shortly after, the free women, and the focus of the film, shifts towards Zaragoza. The attempt at a coup by the nationalists in Barcelona, that'd be Franco's forces, was just one part of a large-scale coup, which would give power to Francisco Franco and his nationalist forces, or was meant to, because not that many of them were successful. At the time, under the Second Republic, Spain was divided into 8 military districts: Madrid, Seville, Valencia, Barcelona, Zaragoza, Burgos, Valladolid, and La Coruña. Franco's plan was to stage simultaneous coups in each of the 8 provinces in a span of just 4 days, July 18th to the 21st of 1936. Franco had a large network of spies and moles loyal to the nationalists within the Republican Army. However, in some places, like Barcelona, Franco's coup was unsuccessful. His pull and his influence just weren't strong enough. But in other districts, like Zaragoza, where Franco had a rather extensive network of co-conspirators, the coup was successful, and those areas were successfully seized by Franco and the fascists. So while the film opens with celebrations in Barcelona and chants of death to capitalism, most of the action takes place in Zaragoza, one of the only districts where Franco's coup was an unmitigated success. Our protagonist is Maria, a nun in Barcelona when the fascist coup fails and the revolution claims victory. And because the Spanish monarchy's century-long unholy alliance with the Vatican, clergy weren't exactly revered amongst the revolutionaries. So Maria, who is a sheltered woman from a wealthy province, now fearing for her life, hides in a brothel where she meets a group of free women and is led into her own spiritual and ideological revolution as she takes arms up against the fascists. So what were our first impressions? Was this the first time you had seen this movie, Hal?
It was. Yes.
Me too. What'd you think?
I quite liked it. It felt a little uneven to me towards the end. Like in terms of, I don't know, there's a dynamic in war films, right, where you kind of have a large group of people, whether that's like a battalion or some portion of a militia, whatever expression it takes, where you have people kind of fading in and out. Folks die, people get injured, they move across some places and acquire new people. And there was something about that dynamic in this movie that didn't feel as realized or smooth for me.
Yeah.
Like it was just like the second half of the movie is like, oh, almost all of these people are gone. And there's like a bunch of men that we've acquired.
It's hurried, I think.
Yeah. There's something about that that's not super graceful in its execution compared to like other war films.
Sure, yeah.
But in general, I really liked it. And I always love when a film is able to foreground a politic and have discussions around ideology. And there be like room for that to breathe. Like we can actually engage in it. And it doesn't just necessarily feel like people are exclusively just preaching at you,
right,
but it's integrated into what's happening throughout the course of the film. So I liked that a lot.
Yeah.
What about you?
I also enjoyed it and share your sentiments that the ending and the kind of like the bigger like battle set pieces feel a little unfinished or unpolished or just rushed and hurried. But one thing that I really like is I think a reason that like leftists love the Spanish Civil War is just because there's so many like different components and different like groups vying for power and vying for like their influence. And I think their influence to become prominent. And I think this movie does a really, really good job of kind of showcasing that, like the kind of like hectic nature of like the celebration of like, well, we push the fascists back, but we know that there's like a revolution is eventually going to need some sort of like overarching like force or power to represent it. Who will that be? Will that be the anarchists? Will that be the loyalists to the republics? Will that be the kind of like
there were socialists that were involved
so we see
the alliance with the Republicans.
We see a lot of the folks who aren't the fascists, the enemies, are more like the your kind of liberal folks who want to like, the like common refrain of like tamp down the rhetoric or don't be so extreme. We see them come up to some of that, like and then also the folks that don't think that women should be in the front lines and things like that. But
yeah, I do think this is something I brought up. This is at this point in episode many moons ago. But it's one of the reasons I really love BPM, or Beats Per Minute, the French film about ACT Paris's AIDS activism, is that I feel that film captures very compellingly what internal conflict looks like what actually debate around tactics, right? Debate around framing, debate around how collective identity should be expressed. Like these are things that were happening at BPM. And I do think this movie gets to some of that as well, where we see people engaged in contention between each other. And it's not in the sense of infighting, but it's in the sense of like, in order to make a new world, you have to debate what that new world, and debate through action, and debate through literal meetings where people are arguing with each other. And I thought those things were highlighted
really well
in this movie.
Yeah. And also, any movie where someone is like literally possessed by the spirit of revolution,
when that happened, I was like, "What the fuck is going on?"
I don't know what's going on, but I'm here for it. We'll get to it, but one character has like a Reagan in The Exorcist moment where like a whole different voice is coming out, and it's great.
There's also just some great dialogue, like some of the dialogue writing in this movie.
Oh my God,
like we'll talk, we'll talk about some of it in a minute. But there's one line in particular that I was like literally in my living room, like,
Hell yeah. So when the movie opens, it's like kind of a celebration, a celebratory vibe in Barcelona. We see people like chanting "Death to the capitalists, death to the fascists," burning a lot of religious iconography.
And burning so many oil paintings. Like, okay, guys, I get the point, but
yeah, you could have sold those to Ben Affleck and The Accountant. What the hell are you doing? I forgot I mentioned that part in The Accountant. He takes payments and like Degas and
which he keeps in an Airstream.
Yeah.
That part is honestly relatable.
The whole movie is relatable. I don't know what you're talking about.
If someone was like, because they pay him in money too. It's not like they don't pay him in money. They pay him in money, and then also they give him like exquisite artwork.
I will say in The Accountant 2, they very specifically say, "Would you like it in the form of 2.5 million or?" And fuck, I can't remember who the artist is, but he says like,
depends who the artist is.
Yeah, he's like, let's just say Renoir, even though it wasn't. He's like 2.5 or Renoir, and this is the best Ben Affleck's ever been in his career. He just takes maybe like too long, like 4 seconds, and he goes, Renoir, obviously.
Yeah.
And then moves on. It's really good.
Correct.
But yeah, so we see a lot of the burning of the religious iconography. And I, as mentioned in the preface here, a lot of that is because so much of Spain's history prior to this was tied into the Vatican. So the church does represent something beyond just the Vatican itself. It represents the like monarchy of Spain. So the hard reaction to that, which positions our protagonist as a nun to have the immediate like knee jerk reaction of I have to flee. My life is in danger. And she really is this like literal church mouse who's we learn is like family is probably rich. It's implied, but not said, has not experienced a lot and is all of a sudden in the throes of revolution and runs to
History doesn't ask you if you want to participate in it. Sometimes it thrusts itself at your doorstep.
You're just there. And
I will say in these early scenes, one of the things that I really like that this movie does is, it sucks when a film just like talks at you to provide exposition. Like it just has someone like saying a voiceover of what's going on. And I think that they do something really effective where the sex workers that we see are gossiping amongst each other and kind of flowing through rooms and, oh, did you hear? And also cracking jokes. And so the exposition feels very natural. Yeah. So by the time we like have the convergence of kind of our main cast of characters, which is Maria the nun, the free women, the anarchist women that we mentioned, and then also the sex workers that they're trying to liberate. We have some idea of the dynamics at play, and it's been shared in kind of this like fun, gossipy tone.
Yeah. And another thing that I like really found fascinating with this movie is it's like how it handles like religion and spirituality in relation to the credos of like anarchism and socialism, and that they're not mutually exclusive as some of the revolutionaries might have had certain people believe, because we do see people that like are disillusioned but still have spiritual practices and things like that. And I think one of the Florin, who is one of the best characters in the movie, who I quite like, later like sums it up by telling Maria, Jesus was the first anarchist. I love Jesus. It's the priests I hate, which is kind of refocuses that attention on how it's the organization of the Catholic Church that is really the ire of
and connecting
the anarchists themselves.
And connecting it to the capitalist system. I mean, my favorite line in this movie, which is closely related to this in terms of time and also subject, is one of the women. Maria is upset because she sees that a priest is being shot, or bishop, I think, is being shot.
Yeah, executed as they're like moving
as they start trying to kind of exit the place that they were and begin their journey. Maria, the nun, former nun, sees a bishop being executed, and the woman that she's with says, "Don't worry, he's going to heaven. God is a fascist." Yeah. And I was like, that is fucking genius. I love that.
It's really good.
Because it's
she tells
true.
Her as she's like actively crying as well.
And it's also, it does kind of reflect, first of all, some between that and the Jesus line, some confusion around, the Trinity. In terms of who is who and what is what in their relationship to each other. But they're like, oh, that like individual relationship with Christ, you can have that. But like God as the father, as the patriarchy over this land is a fascist.
The system is a fascist. Yeah. And yeah, there's several really good lines revolving that. And actually that part about her seeing the priest gets executed reminded me of another movie that we've watched, and I guess another historical revolution, which is Che, the long like speech that he has to give about, the kind of smear campaign of like painting him to be a monster because of executions performed during wartime or whatever. And at one point, Pilar, who we see as kind of the leader of the free women, tells her it's a revolution, not a party, and someone has to pay the consequences. And then later, Florin, who might be the same one that says that God is a fascist, tells her, don't cry too much about your bishop. He was not innocent. He never protested about starvation wages, about keeping the people in ignorance, about letting the poor die, about children working in mines. For centuries, bishops have grown fat and never protested. And
then the end of that, she says there are many ways to kill.
Yeah.
So like we might be shooting them, but all of their complicity and inaction and also active action to repress, peasants. Is also,
and that's when she hands her the
people.
Books too that we later realized, oh, she's been reading these quite a bit.
She's like quoting.
She is quoting chapter, line, and page.
She's like quoting the Conquest of Bread over a loudspeaker. I do think something I want to bring up pretty early in this is I got about 10 minutes in this movie and I was like, why do I recognize
Florin?
No, Maria. I mean, there are several women and several people in this movie have been in many things, but no, Maria is in one of the other movies that we covered in this series. Yes, she's the mother in Pan's Labyrinth.
What?
Yes.
I did not realize that at all.
I think it was like shortly after she takes off the habit. And I was like, that face.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like 15 years later or close to 20 years later. So she is a lot younger. But yes, indeed. She was in 2.
The one that I recognized and couldn't place it and had to look was Florin. And I don't remember the actress's name, but she's the lead in Pedro Almodovar's Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those characters really quick. We've talked about Maria, who is like our city mouse, our nun who finds herself in the midst of the revolution and kind of sees her entire like worldview constantly being challenged. And that's the other part I like about the movie is she's always kind of open to like her perspective being challenged on this. And then well, I mean, if we think about it, right, like especially at that time period and the time periods preceding that, most women who went to convents were not women who were doing so because of their own self-professed faith. They were doing so because the convent was functionally an asylum for dealing with people that families and primarily men and fathers, right, either couldn't take care of, didn't have money for dowries for them, or in some other sense needed them to be managed by an external party. So I think it makes perfect sense in terms of her characterization, right? Like she was thrust into being a nun seemingly by no choice of her own. So it also makes sense that her next stage of her journey is her being directed by forces external to herself. It's not some like intrinsic motivation. Now, she seemingly develops it, but that's not like the impetus for her involvement. Yeah. And then our kind of 3 main characters of the Free Women are Pilar, who is the kind of leader of the group, the really like can give a fiery speech, can motivate, is really like just at the forefront of most of the action. Then there's, I think Concha is how you pronounce it, who I rather like, who's like, I just love that she is kind of the one that just has all the fire and the passion, but it's just constantly like kind of too worked up. And Pilar has to come in and be like, there's several times where like Concha gives like a speech and like her zeal is just a little too much for whoever she's talking to. And Pilar has to come in and be like, give it a little bit of a repackaging.
She's also the one who is like explaining to the sex workers that have come along with them, like the organizational elements, like the very functional instrumental, like you join a committee and this is how the committee makes decisions and somebody needs to be taking notes. Like she is very much like committed to like the practice of anarchism, not just the revolutionary spirit, though she's obviously like that has infected her as well. So I appreciate that. Who hasn't known somebody? I mean, frankly, I have been that person in organizational meetings many times. It's like, we follow the process.
I try my best not to be that person.
Very important that we follow the process.
I sidetrack, but I am involved in some of those organizational meetings sometimes. And there is one person who's great at that makes me simultaneously jealous, but also resent them. Their ability to be like, that is not what we're talking about. Next topic. Whereas like part of me, like my stomach turns over to see that happen. But at the same time, I'm like, man, I wish I had that.
I wish that
I had that ability to kindly tell people to shut up and stop talking about that.
A slight digression, but I was in a meeting this week that was is like a professional development opportunity. Like it's like a reoccurring meeting. It's like a thing that happens. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Ooh. Your black tie.
And we were no, we have paper name tags. Okay, we sit in a room in a dorm, and they the discussion was around like leadership style, and everyone's like going around in circles and describing their leadership style, and every single person except for me is like, I really like a very flat, like I'm very, very anti-hierarchical. I like everything to be like really deliberative. Like that's my leadership style. It's like everyone's involved in everything. And I'm just like, you all ain't never been in a community organization meeting, which I will allow to remain nameless at this time, that is like 4 hours long and then no action items emerge at the end of the meeting because it was just a bunch of people discussing things, which I'm not saying that there's no room for that in our political process. Deliberation is important, and even beyond a political leadership, like general workplace leadership, etc. But like, that is not who I am. Like, we got to have a motherfucking agenda.
Yeah, please.
We got to have a process. We have to determine how we're going to collectively come to a consensus. And that is not people talking at each other in an endless cycle of deliberation. So, but then the person who's responsible for this meeting told me that one of my leadership styles is authoritative. So,
okay,
I would do well in the anarchist.
That's why I just want to avoid being
floating
any sort of leadership position, honestly.
I mean, it's fine. I'll say this. I get shit done. So, people can have whatever feelings about it.
I will.
My results speak for themselves, I think. But it did crack me up in the context of like watching this movie and thinking about process.
Without revealing too much personal details, I am changing jobs slightly. I'm in the same field, but changing jobs slightly. And one of the welcome changes that comes with this new job is I am not in a position of leadership, which is where I was in my previous one. And the kick in my step each morning, waking up knowing that I don't have to do that anymore, has been just lovely. I don't like it. I like my leadership, I'll say working style is like, I know what I'm good at and I know the things that I want to do and I would like to do those. Please. I don't want to deal with. They call
that an asset-based model.
There we go. I'm an asset-based model. What I don't want is dealing with everything else that I don't like. I don't want to know how you do it and have to deal with all the others. Let me do the thing that I do and that I like, and I want to do that. Sorry, there's a lot of there's like a couple years worth of energy coming out in this, but yeah. So
you are the person yelling death to capitalism in the street, and I'm the person being like, "This is how we form a committee."
Exactly. I'm the one. Yeah. But yeah, obviously with the free women, a big theme of the movie is going to be women's role in the revolution. And we see that early on where once they have gone to like the kind of the dust has settled in the Battle of Barcelona, and they're kind of at there is like this first meeting we see where they're trying to find some sort of leadership. We see that there are people within the movement itself, not the anarchists, that are encouraging women to leave the front line, to go do more traditional jobs and roles, including comforting the men.
Put down their guns.
Yeah. And
go fuck yourself.
And we get a very fiery response from Pilar, which is another one of those great moments where like Concha tries to do it first and is just like too worked up. And then Pilar comes in and I'll just read what she says because it's great. She says, it seems we're mad because we want to fight. We don't see why the revolution is in the hands of only half the population. We are anarchists, but we are also women, and we want to make our revolution, not have men make it for us. We don't want a struggle designed to fit the male because we'll be fucked as always. We want to fight so we can claim our part in the share out. And we want to make it clear that just now we're beside ourselves with joy, and it would be a mistake to keep us at home knitting. We want to die, but we want to die like men, not like servants. There's some.
There are snappy, some good fiery dialogue writing in the film.
Yeah, so that is where we're at in the plot, where we learn that. Well, first off, we see them the women of the free women are like discounted almost immediately once they like report to the resistance. Whereas the guy who seems to be like part of maybe a loyalist to the Republic is like trying to convince them to just give up their weapons and just leave so they can have. And then they realize, well, they're not going to do that. And second, they have machine guns, and that would be really helpful in a war. So they kind of reluctantly are like, all right, you can come. And they tell her they're going to send them to a place that is quiet. To which Pilar says something like, well, we'll put an end to that. We'll change that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and we see them kind of there's this street rally where they leave and they go to Zaragoza.
Yeah. They're going to which, Zaragoza is, we'll talk about a little bit more, but it becomes kind of an integral part in the war itself, largely because it's one of the only places where the Franco's coup was a success, one of the only 8 regions. But I do want to talk a little bit about Buenaventura Durruti, who is a character in this and is portrayed quite oddly, I would say, as far as how he's filmed, and that he's almost entirely in shadows. when he gives his speech. But do we want to talk a little bit about who Durruti is? A real person. I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming most of our characters were not real people per se, whereas Durruti was a real person
of the kind of conglomerated anarchist movement.
Yeah, he was kind of like, if there was a face of the movement, it was him. And we see he's really only in 2 scenes. In the first one, we see he's like he's kind of in like a reporter bullpen taking questions. And his face is almost entirely obscured by shadows, and he's getting asked questions like, I feel like this is kind of the movie's opportunity to explain some of the like finer points of like,
right, again, being like the exposition, what they believe, and also the exposition of like trying to understand like they're actually aligned with the government, that the coup is coming from outside of the government. You know, it's a military coup happening externally, and the Republican government that has been established is actually in alliance with the anarchists, which is a relatively complex historical context to try and depict. And like you said, their opinions. I love this. Another place where the dialogue writing is
really good.
Fucking great. I love when he says the bourgeoisie always associate freedom with chaos. And then later in the speech, he says, or in answering questions, he says, workers built the world and they can rebuild it. And I was just like, oh, go off, King.
Yeah. And when they're asking, like, a lot of the questions that, like, the questions that are obviously critical towards the anarchists are about whether or not they are in conflict with any sort of organized government, or are a part of it. And there's some really good lines there as well, where he says that the revolutionaries have organized enthusiasm, not obedience, and that every man and woman is responsible to themselves and to the rest. That is our strength. We, the workers, are destined to inherit the earth. But yeah, and then I will also say towards the end, it does seem like maybe there is some, I don't know, maybe you didn't get this, or maybe I misinterpreted, but maybe some disappointment with Durruti's concessions that he's willing to make towards the end. Because he is the one near the end that gives the official order, though he doesn't want to.
You mean on the part of the anarchist women, like in terms of the disappointment? Yes.
Because he is the one, from outside pressure as well. Because Durruti is a beloved figure still in Spain and amongst leftists. But he does give an order towards the end that the women of the revolution should go home. To which our crew all basically say fuck off immediately, which is another good scene.
When they, you've mentioned it a little bit, Craig, but when they arrive to the front, when the anarchist women, the free women arrive to the front, they supposed comrades, right, want them to relinquish their weapons. And when they refuse, they send them to what they say is a quiet part of the front. So you mentioned that happens after the discussion with the journalists and Durruti. And we see that what's happening on the quiet part of the front is like kind of quiet group of men that now the women have joined that are just kind of like building trenches out of sandbags, right? Like they're not really doing a lot else. They start fucking around and throwing around a pumpkin. Like they're chilling. They are fully part of the war movie where it's like boredom. Yeah. Like nothing is going on here. And this is where we start to see Maria is quoting Kropotkin. She's shouting propaganda throughout the valley because I think they do have this like sense of safety. They're almost like play acting at a future that is free. Like
an anarchist paradise, which we kind of see her reference in the final moments of the movie as well.
Right. And then this is where we see that Florian is possessed.
This is the best part of the movie.
This was a little hard for me to grok, to be honest. Not in the sense that I disliked it, but I was just like, I don't even know what's going on here.
There's just moments in movies where I was like, oh, it's such it's such an audacious left turn that I can't do anything. I'll compare it. I think I've made this comparison before, but in Spike Lee's Summer of Sam, when the dog starts talking, I was like, fuck yes, let's go. Yes. Let's go. And this is one of those moments where I was like, okay, let's go. Whereas they like rush in to report something's wrong with Florin. And when they get into the room, she's doing like a full like like demon voice.
Yeah.
And
so who is she claiming to be? I know you wanted to talk about this a little.
She is tells the group that she has been possessed, or no, I guess she doesn't tell them that, but they learn that she is possessed by the spirit of Mateo Morale. And who was Mateo Morale? He was an anarchist himself who has a bit of a storied history in Spain, as he tried to unsuccessfully spur revolution in 1906 by trying to assassinate King Alfonso XIII and Queen Victoria on their wedding day. As their wedding procession made its way through Madrid, Morale lobbed a bomb that he wrapped in a bouquet at the king's carriage. But like, as the plan might suggest, it like was kind of a disaster. I think I read an article that says it like bounced off the balconies below him, and like, I mean, it was a hell of an effort, but he ended up killing like 24 people.
None of whom were
Alfonso or Victoria.
You know what? I respect the political theater. Like, usually people mean like political theater in a negative sense, but like, I do appreciate like the art that this man was trying to bring.
Yeah. It's like, happy fucking wedding, assholes.
Probably didn't think about like the implications of doing so for the actual like velocity of.
Yeah, but she says a few like, well,
I did not know that prior to you.
Yeah. So for delightful. The like plot of the movie, Florin as Mateo says some important stuff involving dynamite, which triggers something in Maria, who basically it sends her on like, oh, dynamite, that sounds familiar, and it basically leads her to uncover like a cache of dynamite in this old convent or church they're like hollowed out and staying in. But some of the more interesting things that they say is first off, the spirit of Mateo Morale is a bit critical of the revolution, and also prophesizes to them, saying that they left Barcelona undefended to come here and be killed. And then it's also Mateo's spirit is critical of Durruti, who says that he emphasized collectivism among the peasantry instead of training them for a fight.
So this is like a very classic social movement and revolution problem. So like on a less intense example, there's a very classic paradox between organizational maintenance and organizational growth, right? Like the behaviors and actions that you need to take, the time investments, the allocation of resources in order to like keep an organization functioning versus growing the organization and recruiting more members are oftentimes in tension with each other. And I think the same thing is true like of a revolution, right? Like it's a very classic, do you want to engage in prefigurative politics? Meaning like that phrase means trying to display the behavior that you want the eventual world to reflect. So engaging in collectivism now so that we can embody it later. Yeah. Or do you want to like make the revolution? Because those things all require time, energy, resources, convincing people. And you can't always do both of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So very classic tension happening between these like, two men.
Really like fluid way of incorporating the like differing perspectives amongst the leftists into the movie without like turning it into like a lecture or whatever. Like, yeah. Also another, I think, similarity between the Cuban Revolution and Che, where we see like a lot of that is that movie is spent with Che's like time amongst the peasantry, like educating them to communism and things like that. And at one point in the movie, I believe like some of them say, why do you spend so much time? And he basically mirrors that same opinion that like, well, if the revolution is a success, we need the people to build up from there or whatever. But and then we get introduced to them slowly over a series of increasingly uncomfortable scenes. But there is a priest who is a little
former priest. He wants to tell us that repeatedly. Yeah. I'm not currently a priest. Actually, I'm not currently a priest.
You're like, yeah, man. Hey. Oh, and boy, does he, or boy, would he like to. He is like repeatedly trying to make advances on Maria, and like just straight up asking her to marry him at one point. And I think it's kind of a interesting literal representation of Maria's being pulled between like her old world and the new, and her trying to, buck against this guy, which really she's shown zero interest in, but has to continuously like spurn his advances. And he is. What is your take on this guy? He seems like an asshole, like for the most part. And then there's that moment at the end when like he orders them to do something and she's like, no. And he gives like a knowing smile. That's like, good call.
Yeah. I think he is an opportunist.
Yeah.
Right. Like he's someone who doesn't have strong ideological commitments. He's like a limp noodle. Just like but it's just kind of like a sand being pressed into whatever shape presents itself to him.
Yeah, I don't want to be this, but I'm definitely not going to be a fascist. So I guess I'm going to do this. Yeah,
and okay, in my previous iteration was a priest, and then the second that I'm not in that setting, I'm trying to fuck a nun. Which like hot, I guess, but no convictions. Not a man of convictions.
Also, fellas, really poor pickup line in here where she asks him to take her confession, to which he refuses because he's also like petrified of anyone else knowing that he was a priest for fear that he'll be killed or whatever. And he refuses to take her confession and instead kisses her and then tells her, and bless the revolution, for without it, no one would have ever kissed you.
Oh,
fellas.
Fuck yourself.
Fellas.
Go fuck yourself, sir.
Okay, so we're moving into kind of the third act, which is the kind of the few like action sequences and military sieges we see, which the first is the attack on San Roman, which as far as like, the logistics of the war, San Roman was kind of an outpost outside of Zaragoza where the nationalists held. So there was a series of those, whereas, the free women were specifically set up to that one. But there was a series of these outposts for the nationalists that once those fell, they could move into Zaragoza. And using the dynamite that Maria's found and an armored truck that they blast through a barricade with, they take San Roman, the outpost, and then are able to take Zaragoza. And there's a great sequence with a fascist on a balcony who's basically says, "You're not going to take me alive," and then hangs himself. And then the like really cold moment where two of them walk up to him as his legs are kicking, and he's like, you're gonna choke for an hour. You should have used longer rope.
Should have used a longer rope is what he says.
And
then they shoot him.
Shoot him, a bunch of times. But yeah, and then as they have taken Zaragoza is really when we see a lot of the like infighting and the ideas about who is a revolutionary, who can be in the revolution and who can't be, kind of come to a head. And that is the second scene where we see Durruti, where he agrees to ask, I guess, because it's definitely not a command. There's no one there to back it up. The women to leave the front line, at least the free women that we see. And he does say he's willing to about like an organized military. One person says that militarization is inevitable, to which he ultimately kind of agrees and says that he will make concessions about applying an iron discipline because he is willing to renounce everything except victory. So we see that Durruti is like,
right, making trade-offs in the moment. And to be clear, I mean, I think we've talked about this or danced around it, but like prior to this point, the anarchists are just like militias. They're not, it's not in that they are not organized in any sense, but they are not a formal military.
Yeah.
Where
there's no hierarchy
people, right. Yeah, or there's like the hierarchy that emerges in kind of these locales, like we see on screen, where there is someone saying we should be doing this, but there's not a military in the sense
of like
that like
rank and
ranks. There's clear orders. There's clear chains of command. You have obligations that extend beyond whether or not you want to participate. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the militarization of these militias. Right.
Which, is in also, I've obviously not, our protagonists are not into the militarization of it. And there's a great sequence.
Well, especially because the men are saying you
need to go home.
You need to go home as part of this, and not just go home, but go run a laundry is what they specifically direct them to do.
Yeah. You could go and they say it in a way that's like, really
men ruin everything,
condescending.
including the revolution.
They say it in a way that's really condescending, where they call it like the laundry unit or something, that is like still trying to make it sound like
go do your duty, wench. That's what they're saying. Yeah.
And there's wait, how are we not going to talk about the peeing in the jar scene and the fact that we learned that half of them have gonorrhea? Which I mean,
when they go to the laundry, they make all of the women go to a medical office and they all squat down on the ground and piss into jars. It's like so baffling. That's what I mean, is that things just like bleed out kind of towards the end of the movie, where I'm like, why is this what we're doing?
I'm gonna be honest, I liked it. Whoever the guy was that played the doctor that was just baffled by everything when he walked in, I thought that guy was
like
great.
Singing while pissing, like, you know, collectivist to the end.
And then we get the ugliest part of the movie, which is within a few days, the Franco's nationalist forces attempt to retake Zaragoza, in which they are ultimately successful. And we see that Florin and Concha are both killed in very violent ways.
Yeah, they essentially kill. What we think at that moment is they're essentially killing every woman in front of Maria, and then they violently assault Maria.
Yeah, that was that was a left turn where I was like, because it's like 5 minutes from the end, and I was like,
right,
Jesus.
It's just like extremely horrible shit. She's like quoting the Conquest of Bread, and then it's like horrible things happening.
Yeah.
And then she is captured at the conclusion of that and interrogated, including like asking if she was a nun, right? Like there's some additional betrayal on her head because of it. And we see that, you know, there is obviously it's authoritarian in terms of the relationship with Maria and her experience, which is violent. But we also see that there's authoritarianism across the Franco's military, because all of the people have to have identification and constantly justify who they are and where they're coming from and have permission to travel or leave the space. So we just very immediately see like this dominance and oppression that he brings to the area.
Yeah. And the film ultimately ends with what I thought was a very touching moment in a way that kind of brings it full circle, which is while she's been jailed by Franco's military, and in this jail she comes across Pilar, who's mortally wounded and is actively dying, and Maria comes down and comforts her, and in the same way you would expect a clergyman or a nun to deliver last rites, instead of the last rites, she kind of tells Pilar about the anarchist utopia that they'll one day be in, and it'll be sanctioned by God himself. And I don't know, I just thought it was a very I think the arc of the movie, if there is one for any character, is definitely Maria's, her ideological shift, and to see that closing moment where she still has some of that religious tendency, but it has clearly forever been altered by her experience and these new things that she believes and has been exposed to, doesn't change who she is, but it certainly shifts the way she views the world.
Well, and also in those actions, she is so much more self-possessed
than she's ever been in the movie.
She's ever been. So there is a very interesting characterization turn of, her kind of religious practice prior to her full conversion to anarchism, which we don't see super explicitly or in large volume. But what we do see is a lot of it is asking other people, right? Can I give confession? It's very supplicant, I have to be kneeling at the feet of someone else's beliefs and in their service. And she's very meek. She doesn't seem like she is fully invested in what she's doing. Whereas this, it's she is in the role of the comforting nun, but it's in service of principles that she believes in.
Yeah.
So I think that is really a beautiful turn.
Great closing sequence. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say this movie can be watched on Internet Archive. That's how I viewed it.
Oh, it can also be watched in the shittiest resolution you've ever seen in your life on YouTube, which is how I watched it.
That is not dissimilar from how it is on Internet Archive, which is why, for example, I did not talk a lot. Not that we predominantly talk about the politics and the messages of the films anyway, but usually we talk a little bit more about the making of the film, or, you know, some filmic qualities. And
I saw none. Look like dog shit on my end.
Yeah, it does not look good.
It is hard to find.
And yes. So, but I do think, you know, if you are someone that is interested in the Spanish Civil War and anarchism, in women's role in anarchism, it's definitely worth watching. And I also think it's very special to have a movie that is really about a failure, like a political failure that isn't trying to solve the problem of why that happened.
Yeah.
Like it just kind of is letting it exist and allowing the context and the ideological battles that are taking place in that context just like kind of exist for itself, which I think is nice. It's not trying to wrap it up in some neat bow, like the anarchists fail because they're anarchists or, you know, whatever. It's not, I don't think, really landing in any particular direction on those issues. I think it just is letting it exist as a scenario that happened at a time.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was so much fun being back. Is that all we have on Libertarias?
Yeah, back again. So if we want to say what we're going to do for our next...
Yeah, it's going to get steamy in here because I've seen the way y'all been talking on X and all the other social medias about...
X. Come on, don't acquiesce to...
What, X, the everything website?
Every time you call it X, he experiences some relief from ketamine bladder. Don't do that.
These details that are coming out in the last week have been great, by the way. Also, his daughter just running up and down every Twitch stream in the world saying the funniest shit.
Love her.
Is great.
Honestly, hashtag resistance, hashtag free women is Vivian.
Vivian. I was about to ask, what is her name? Because I cannot remember what it
Vivian.
is.
So you want to say the movie?
We're going to watch... we're going to talk about Sinners with 2 times the Michael B. Jordan.
Yes.
Listen,
great.
I also agree. He is looking great in this movie, and there's 2 of them.
Everyone is looking great in this movie. In that movie. It's a film so nice I saw it twice in theaters.
I should do the same. Got that A-list.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll do Sinners on the next one, and then we'll move into a new series after that.
Woohoo!
All right, we'll get you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Kill the